When are we up? When are we up? When are we live? When are we live?
You have 5 seconds.
All right. Well, give me 10.
4, 3, 2.
Good evening. I am Dave Guerra, and tonight we will be discussing Fox News and Al Jazeera and how they cover ISIS. Joining us today are leading analysts Cara Caglione, Priscilla Del Corn, Michelle Gomez, and Giselle Vargas. We will be discussing methods used to cover ISIS, such as framing, emphasis, bias, and balance. The locations we will direct our attention to will be the Orlando shootings, the Brussels attacks, the attacks in San Bernardino, and the attacks in Baghdad. On this show, we will answer a few questions about each of the news networks. For instance, how does the coverage of a region differ between these publications? How much space is given to the region compared to other areas? What is the main issues being portrayed of each news media? Who is being represented? What is missing in the coverage? And how is the coverage balanced or biased? With Al Jazeera headquarters in Qatar and Fox News in New York, we hope to capture differences between the two and emphasize different agendas and perspectives each organization has regarding ISIS. First, we will start with the San Bernardino incident, in which I will look to our lead analyst, Michelle, who has an insightful perspective on the matter.
The way the media portrays the message of the incident that took place on December 2nd, 2015 in San Bernardino, California, Fox News at the first insight isn't certain who the gunmen are, but later find out. Tashin Marnik and Shadiq Farouk, who pledged for ISIS, Al Jazeera doesn't pinpoint exactly who the attackers are. It has been quoted the most deadliest attack since 9/11. The main issues that are portrayed are terrorist attacks, who pledge ISIS. Both news networks use framing to represent Muslims, ISIS, and the American people. Fox News and Al Jazeera is based on the information and the details included on the incident.
Now we're going to go over to Giselle with some information on the Brussels coverage. Giselle?
Thank you for the introduction, Kara. After the tragic events that took place at the Brussels airport and metro station, one can see how the two perspectives from Al Jazeera and Fox News differ in their approaches on covering the incident. Fox News uses bias when covering the topic, while Al Jazeera is more neutral when initially breaking the news to the public. Al Jazeera spends minimal time covering the events that took place in Brussels, while Fox News made this event its breaking news story for days after. Although Fox News spent an adequate amount of time covering the topic, they were more concerned with these tragic events, how these tragic events would affect the United States from here moving forward. What steps can we take to ensure that something like this doesn't happen to us, was one of the questions that was asked. Fox News also spoke with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump on his stance on ISIS, to which he responded that we need to be very careful who comes into our country. Al Jazeera's news correspondent uses framing when talking to her guests. She asks leading questions such as, is Europe going to have to accept now that these types of attacks are the new norm? And is Europe going to be safe anytime soon? Overall, Al Jazeera is seemingly more neutral in terms of covering the Brussels attack and ISIS, while Fox News is completely biased with their agenda.
Now we're going to go over to Priscilla with some information on the Brussels.
With different emphasis that tie to the shooter's attack. Fox News describes the shooter and his attack as a terrorist attack affiliated with ISIS. Their main focus is to convey the events in a way where the shooter is seen as under the influence of ISIS. Al Jazeera, on the other hand, expresses the event as an attack by an American citizen with Afghan origins. It doesn't make any remark on the shooter's possible tie with ISIS and tries to minimize the influence ISIS had on the event and radicalism. Fox News gave a really expanded cover about the event in general, prioritizing the issue and expanding the news coverage, making it the most important news for a while. Al Jazeera published the cover with another news concerning different focuses rather than prioritizing it and making it the center of attention. The main issue being portrayed from Fox News perspective is the importance of the shooter's affiliation with ISIS and the intentional attack. Al Jazeera News seems not to specify the main issue concerning with the shooter's attack or affiliation with ISIS, simply giving the cover and stating their perception of the facts. The way the media frames their reference toward the terrorist group is completely different. The description used in Fox News towards the terror group was simply a terrorist attack with ISIS alliances, unlike Al Jazeera, who refers to ISIS as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and not specifically representing it as such an important aspect of the shooter's attack. There is considerably a good amount of bias from both Fox News and Al Jazeera. For instance, first off, Fox News begins by stating alliances of the Orlando shooter with ISIS, without doubt that this terrorist group is responsible for the attack rather than expressing it as a possibility. They blame ISIS for the shooter's attack and rely more on amplifying their news coverage on such topic rather than stating personal testimonies and or public's response. Most of the covers on the topic stay within the shooter and Islamic ties. Al Jazeera News, on the other side, seems to convey the event in such a way where the publication is not a main priority, simply seen as a news and not covering much emphasis on the shooter's ties with ISIS. They try to mainly keep out the issues concerning with ISIS due to it being a Muslim country, which is why they do not emphasize the attack on a terrorist attack like Fox News does. So, from what has been told in both news coverage, it leans to the side of the issues accordingly to their best interest, disclosing a few different perspectives on the issue.
Now let's talk about a region that doesn't get as much coverage, but happens to be one of the largest terrorist attacks that have happened in Baghdad. And now we're going to go to Dave to help us fill in on that. Dave?
Okay. By this point of our analysis, we can start seeing a trend on both sides, Fox News and Al Jazeera. But what are we missing? We're missing the bombings in Baghdad. On July 3rd of this year, 300 people died in a suicide bombing in Baghdad. Let's start talking about the type of coverage Al Jazeera has in the Middle East. For one, the headquarters is in Qatar, while Fox News headquarters are in New York City. Al Jazeera's main focus is on the Middle East, but has been trying to expand to Western journalism since 2006 with the creation of Al Jazeera in English. Fox News covers the Middle East, but puts more of a focus on political issues that are framed with agenda-setting topics that News Corp has for them. The basis of framing theory is that media focuses attention on a certain event and then places them within the field of meaning. For instance, a news broadcast from Fox News talks about the event of July 3rd bombing in Baghdad, which killed over 300 people, but was not the main point of discussion. In fact, Fox News constantly used framing to impose a larger meaning behind the news coverage of a devastating event by asking the question, would Donald Trump do better than Hillary Clinton in this situation and handling ISIS? With the title of the article named Death Toll in Baghdad Bombing Reportedly Surges, but the questions being asked with the political backing give an indication of framing a different story out of topic and at hand. Al Jazeera, of course, has a different framing method at hand by pushing the political influence of their own with publishing a title, Despair Grows as Residents in the Iraqi Capital Feel Unprotected in the Face of Yet Another Deadly Attack. While many people may find truth behind the title, we must look at Al Jazeera's reason with a possible motive for dramatic political outrage towards a party. In this case, the Iraqi government. Al Jazeera also gives more visual graphics to show people dying, people hurt, and a lot of travesty going on versus all the other news medias. This is to help capture the audience's attention, but is appreciated by many viewers. At the end of the day, we must understand that framing must be used in media because it creates connection to more stories of interest. With Fox News setting its own agenda and Al Jazeera influencing public opinion on both government and media sides, they're both missing data content that talks about the investigation process, about facts, what's actually happening there, what's going to happen next there, instead of what influence can we impose on the government or what benefit can we get.
And there you have it, two completely different points of views framed in a perspective distinct and careful enough for audience digestion. Yet keep in mind we are only emphasizing the methods that Fox News and Al Jazeera use in order to push a perspective all over the world. But now that we have provided you guys with some insight on just how these two news networks can operate when it reports on a subject, hopefully you as an audience member can decipher between what is exactly informative news versus what is sensationalized news when it comes to all news networks. Because at the end of the day, only you can choose your news, so choose wisely. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good night, world.